What is crypto and why are people investing in it? Hey everyone, Ian King here from Winning Investor Daily. And in today's YouTube video, we're going to just break it down and talk about why is crypto so important to not only the future of our financial system, but the future of our economy and the future of society. And I want to just go over some of the basic tenets of what crypto is so you can better understand why people are so excited about investing in this space. Now, before we get into it today, if you like our comment, please go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to our channel to hear more content if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a comment. I would love to hear about your first experience with Bitcoin and what you thought of it when the first time you heard it was. So that brings me to a funny story. I first heard about Bitcoin way back in 2011. I was living in New York City at the time, and there were these Occupy Wall Street protests. And I remember walking by them in Zuccotti Park. And, there are a lot of people camped out in tents. Some of them hadn't showered in a number of days. And there was a big sign in the middle of the gathering that said, "Please help us donate Bitcoin here," and had, a wallet address where you could donate Bitcoin. So then I said to myself, well, what is this thing Bitcoin that they're looking to collect? So I started doing some research about it. And back then, Bitcoin was a very libertarian idea. If you look back at the first Genesis block created by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009, there was a message that was encoded in it that said that the chancellor was on brink of second bailout. It was an article from a UK newspaper, which talked about how the banking system was about to be bailed out by the government again. And so you can see right from the very origin, the idea of Bitcoin was this form of alternative money that couldn't be censored by the government and wouldn't be, overrun by government entities like a lot of fiat currencies are. And so let's just rewind and talk about the idea of what is money. So money has to have three properties. And money is a store of value, which means that it has to hold its value over time, which is one of the reasons why perishable items like food are not good forms of money because, eventually they rot and you can't use them anymore. Secondly, money has to be a unit of account, which means that things have to be priced in that money. One of the reasons that the dollar is so popular around the world is because we price all commodities in it, whether it be gold or oil, and other countries follow the price of those commodities in US dollars as well. And lastly, money has to be a medium of exchange, which means that it has to be accepted places. There have to be merchants that are willing to accept your form of money. And that are the three essential properties of money: store value, unit of account, medium of exchange. And throughout history, money has taken different forms. If you go back to some of the earliest civilizations in human history, you'll see that they used, exotic shells that they found on the beaches as a form of money. And then eventually, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, money started to become precious metals like gold and silver. And it wasn't until about 800 years ago that we started using a form of currency, a form of paper currency as money. Nowadays, obviously, we use in our country the US dollar. And the reason for that is because the government makes you have to use it because you have to pay your taxes in US dollars. So in order to be a citizen and you're earning wages, you have to convert whatever money you're earning into US dollars to pay the US government. And that's essentially why the very basis of why we have the US dollar as our form of money here in the United States. But Bitcoin did something really interesting. It created a form of money that did not have a centralized authority that was governing it. Okay, so it was something of digital value whose ownership could be tracked across space and time. And essentially what the Bitcoin network does and the underlying blockchain does is it keeps track of who owns what. And if you think about, our normal life, our banks keep track of who owns what. When you go to make a payment, let's say at the drugstore or the supermarket, your bank is notifying the drugstore or the supermarket that you have those funds in your account and you can pay for the transaction. Now, that's if you're not using paper currency, of course. But what blockchain and Bitcoin do is it is a decentralized system where it will keep track of what wallets own how many specific forms of cryptocurrency. And Bitcoin was obviously the first version of this. And so Bitcoin really got its start as basically an alternative to what was happening during the time. Back then, 10, 15 years ago, we had the great financial crisis. And there were a lot of people who were concerned about how the government was basically picking winners and losers. They were bailing out certain banks, letting other banks fail. They were bailing out auto companies, racking up lots of debt in the process, which a lot of people were concerned and still are concerned about who is going to pay for this debt eventually in the future. And Bitcoin came as an alternative to having a currency that could be inflated away with more debt in the future. So that was really the first instance of cryptocurrency. That's why it burst onto the scene. And then it started to evolve. But I'm going to talk more about crypto's evolution in further videos, but I just wanted you to understand where Bitcoin came from. And it's hard to believe that one of the earliest use cases I saw was in Occupy Wall Street, where they were asking for Bitcoins to help finance their movement. So I'm Ian King. Thanks for tuning into this webinar. And again, I'll talk more about crypto's evolution in future Friday updates. So look forward to them and subscribe to our channel if you want to learn more. Thanks again for tuning in.